Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm creating a double page 12 by 12 layout using the Everyday You and Me workshop kit from Stampin' Up. I've already used this kit on a previous layout where I went into more detail about what's included. I'll link the video at the end if you'd like a deeper dive into the kit. For this layout though, I'm focusing more on the creative process itself, so let's dive right in. I'm looking at this gorgeous pattern paper as the base of my layout. It screams beach to me and I can't bring myself to cut it up too much. So I really want to keep the design intact and not cover too much of it. Now I'm deciding whether I want the pattern to run the same way on both sides or if I should rotate it so that the pattern moves diagonally across the page. And I do love the idea of a diagonal pattern. I really think it draws the eye across the layout. So these are the pictures I am documenting today. I'm thinking of placing this 3x4 photo of my youngest son, Evan, sitting on the beach on this sand-like section of the paper, and then the photos of my oldest son, Aiden, in the water across the blue section. They are 3x4 as well, but in the portrait orientation. For the left side of the layout, I'll place my 4x6 focal photo right here. And as for the other 3x3 photos, I'm thinking of stacking them in a column. If you've been following me for a little while, you know I love this arrangement. To me, it really helps tell the story. And I'm also planning to use a flip flap to include an extra photo or two. Now this layout is coming together pretty quickly. I do feel like it could use a frame. I have two types of Lost Lagoon 12 by 12 cardstock. One is tone on tone, meaning it has a light side and then a true side with a white core. This is a new product to the Stampin' Up world. Thank you, close to my heart, ladies. Anyway, the other cardstock is just the regular stock Stampin' Up cardstock, which is kind of a heavier weight compared to the two-tone cardstock they are now carrying. The two-tone definitely is a lighter weight and it works great for scrapbooking, but for this project, I've decided to use the stock Lost Lagoon cardstock to create the frame. I'm saving the two-tone cardstock for a different project. And since I'm using pattern paper as the base of my layout, I want to give it a little bit more weight, so that's why I'm using the heavier cardstock. I'll also gut out the center of the cardstock to stretch my materials for future use. Now, when it comes to gutting the cardstock, you really need to use a roll trimmer. A guillotine style trimmer won't work for this technique. I'm going to place my cardstock at the 1-inch mark on my trimmer. Then I'm going to run the blade down starting 1 inch from the top and then stopping 1 inch from the bottom. After lifting the blade, I'll turn the paper and repeat this process on the other 3 sides. Now this technique will give me a nice clean frame. These photos were from a trip we took to California back in 2022, which was almost exactly 10 years to the day from our last trip to LA. One of the days we were in California, we had a fantastic beach day at Huntington Beach. I'm so excited that I'm finally documenting these today. Sometimes I don't cut all the way through in the corners, so I'll just use my scissors and finish the job by snipping away any missed areas. After trimming the pattern paper down about half an inch on 2 sides, I went ahead and attached the frame to the back. I like to apply adhesive to the cardstock layer so that I can make sure I've placed it in the right spots. I'm using the Beach Day stamp with dies, which you can find in the May 2024 to April 2025 annual catalog, and I'll have that listed in the description box below if you're interested. My plan is to create some fun beach scenes in my embellishment clusters. One thing I've really grown to appreciate about Stampin' Up dies is how many options they offer. Not only do the dies work for the stamped images, there's also extra standalone dies that you can use to create bigger and better scenes on both cards and scrapbook layouts. Before I started filming this layout, I was playing around with the lifeguard tower. I stamped it with gray granite ink on plain white cardstock, and while this is cute, I started thinking, what if I stamped it on white wood grain paper instead? This way, it's not just plain white, and I don't feel the need to have to color it. So I grabbed the wood grain papers from the Country Woods DSP, and I have a few choices for papers. These are the 3 white wood grain options I'm considering. The first one has the right scale, but I think it's just a bit too gray. Now, I think the second option, although I do really like the colors, would be too big for a stamped image, and I don't think the wood grain pattern would be as noticeable or effective at this scale. Then there's the third option, which has a smaller wood grain pattern, so the scale is perfect, and the colors match really well with the base paper I'm using, especially with the wild wheat color and the lighter tones of gray. This one is definitely the winner. So I went ahead and I stamped it in gray granite ink, and I used the coordinating dies to cut it out. And I absolutely love how this turned out. It's actually better than I had envisioned in my head. Sorry about the glare on that one picture. I didn't notice it until after the fact. So I'm browsing through this bin that I store my extra beach themed images in, and look what I found. The word day already stamped out. I think I used Pool Party ink for this. Now, Pool Party isn't one of the coordinating colors for this collection, but I actually think it looks great. And it really has that beachy vibe. I'm thinking I would really like to use this as part of my title. So for some inspiration, I turned to ChatGPT and asked for surf-themed title ideas using the word day. I got a bunch of fun suggestions, but Epic Surf Day totally jumped out at me. It just sounds like something a teen would say, and I love the vibe for this layout. So to complete the title, I grabbed the alphabet a la mode dies, and I'm going to spell out the rest of the words to see how it'll look in place. Now, the really nice thing about these dies is that they include duplicate letters for more commonly used ones. So most of the time, you only have to run them through once. Since we planned a beach day on this trip, I booked surf lessons for the boys before we even left home. It was such an awesome experience, and as a family from Alberta, Canada, we don't get many chances to be near the ocean. So this was really a once-in-a-lifetime moment, I think, for them. Now I'm torn about which cardstock to use for the title, Gray Granite or Lost Lagoon. I think I'll cut out the letters in both colors to see which one works better in the end. Honestly, I've always seemed to struggle with my title colors. So right now I have one word in gray and one in lagoon, and I'm going to think about this for a little bit. Now, I'm definitely not a pro. I'm just a hobbyist who wants to share ideas and creations here on YouTube. That's why I leave my indecisiveness in my videos, because I think we all struggle with something, and I want to show you how I handle these decisions, or sometimes non-decisions. I give myself permission to think about it, and I move on to something that I do know. Since I already know I want to use the Beach Day stamp set for the icons on this layout, and since the images are on the smaller side, I'm thinking I can layer them with some bigger elements to give them a bit more depth. So my first idea was using these sand dollars from the Seaside Wishes set. So off camera, I went ahead and embossed and die cut several sand dollars from white cardstock. Now this way I can add any color I want to the sand dollars. And if I end up not using any of them on this layout, they'll be perfect for another layout in the future. But as I was looking at the cardstock left over from cutting the sand dollars, I couldn't help but notice the beautiful sand embossing left behind. So that got me thinking, What if I die cut a few circles from this leftover paper and created little sandy beach spots for my embellishments to land on? I love how this could add texture and depth to the design. And honestly, I might not even use the sand dollars at all. I'll set one circle over here on the right behind the tower. Now I'm being mindful of my placement because this circle has a bit of that sand dollar impression on it, and I don't want that to show. I'm also going to switch out these two pictures here. I want to have the picture of Aiden surfing in the middle to draw more attention to it. I wasn't really liking the open space that was cut out for the window. I did keep the piece that was cut out, and I'm going to use some washi tape to attach it to the back. Now that is much better. I didn't like that you could see my photo through the window. Then I'll place another circle up here beside the picture of my youngest son, Evan, and one over here on the left. Wait, let's switch these two circles around. Put the bigger one on the left. I think this will be my biggest of the three clusters, so this just makes sense to me. And of course, I had to add surfboards to the layout. I stamped them on Lagoon cardstock with the same ink color, and then I used the coordinating dies to cut them out. Aren't they cute? I also stamped and cut out a sandcastle on Pecan pie cardstock with the same ink color, and I'm going to place that over here beside the picture of Evan sitting in the sand. So a funny story about our experience at the beach. When we first arrived, the place wasn't crowded at all. While we were waiting for the surf instructor, crowds started showing up. Within the hour, the beach was packed. People brought all sorts of gear. Chairs, coolers, beach toys, music, and so many umbrellas or beach shades. We didn't think we needed an umbrella. Actually, the temperature when we first arrived was pretty cool. But by the end of the boys' lessons, the sun was so hot. It melted the cheese we had left over from lunch that was sitting in the cooler we had packed. My poor ginger guys, they were getting burnt. My husband even burnt the tops of his feet. We always use sunscreen, but it just wasn't enough. So I knew I had to add a beach shade, which I stamped and die cut out of Lost Lagoon, same as the surfboards, and a chair. And I used the same wood grain paper that I used for the tower on the layout. Two things we didn't have, but definitely wished we did after the fact. I also cut out a few seashells from pumpkin pie cardstock to repeat the colors within the clusters. And I'm feeling pretty good about where this is going. Before I get too far in the embellishing though, I want to add some pecan pie ink to those circles to enhance that sandy look. I think adding ink will really help bring out the dimension and give depth to those raised bumps in the paper. I'm using a scrap piece of paper as my work surface, and I have two sizes of blending brushes. So for this project, I'm thinking the smaller one will be better, especially on this circle. Since there's a bit of the embossed sand dollar here, I don't want to draw attention to it by adding any color. The small brush gives me a little bit more control with that. I also want to mention that I'm blotting the brush off onto the scrap piece of paper before applying it onto the circle. This will avoid any harsh lines or dark spots. While I'm at it, I'll ink a few of the sand dollars too, just to have them ready. I finished inking all the sandy elements off camera, and I'm really happy with the extra detail it adds. It's subtle, but it really brings everything to life. I just love this piece of coral. It's left over from a previous layout I did, and I'm thinking I could place it behind the circle here to give this cluster a little bit more height. Now I've got a few more pieces to work with. Maybe I'll place one here. Oh no, definitely not. That looks like an antler. That won't do. Can you tell I'm Canadian? I also have a bunch of leftover embellishments from a really old paper pumpkin kit. Like I think it was 2022 maybe. It made the cutest cards, but after building them, I still had a ton of pieces left. They're the perfect size for my clusters, and the colors are a great match. Look at this palm tree. If you're following along, you can easily use the dies from this stamp set to cut out palm trees on your own. There are 2 pieces for the treetops, so they have a nice dimensional look. And even the trunk has detail lines on it. I just love Stampin' Up! Dies. They are so detailed. So for the final touches, I'm adding elements into the clusters, including the small sand dollars and sea stars from the paper pumpkin kit, which were cut out of glitter paper. So how fun is that? I'm also adding little greenery pieces to fill in the clusters, and I really love the scale of these icons. Now, normally I'd use larger elements for my scrapbook layouts, but because I don't want to cover up too much of this gorgeous paper, using small pieces in my clusters work perfectly. My focal photo needs some attention. I want to pull in more gray in this layout. So I have this scrap piece of gray granite cardstock, and I'm going to use a small 1/8 of an inch mat. And then I'm thinking, what if I mat this with Lost Lagoon as well? Then that ties in the frame background. Now, what I do on one side, I'd like to repeat that on the other. And since I'd like to highlight this picture of my oldest son Aiden's moment of actually surfing, I'm going to repeat the same treatment on that. Yep, I like that. I'd really like to use more of the wild wheat color on this layout. I love this journal spot. It's perfect for the date and location. I think I'll tuck it behind here, and that'll help give me a little bit more height to this area, since I'm no longer using the coral embellishment. I'm also thinking about this sticker sheet. There may be a few icons I can use on it. I'd like to make this sticker work. I really like that water effect that it has on it. What if I placed it upside down on the layout and tucked it behind this picture here? Then you won't see that flower detail, but you'll still see all that watercolor look. Then I can use it as a nice resting spot for that palm tree. Yeah, I think that could work. And to repeat the wood grain paper in this cluster, I found this leftover sentiment spot from the card kit cut out of wood grain paper. It's similar to the other wood grain I used. I'm going to look through my stamp collection for a sentiment that I can stamp onto it. For more wild wheat color, I turned back to the sticker sheet and saw this little washy bit here. So first I'm going to remove the sticky, then I'm thinking I'll dovetail the end of the sticker. I'll place it here to anchor this cluster. Then I'll place some of the embellishments on top. It's okay. I'm not sure about it yet, but I'll leave it here for now. I do know I want to place this sentiment, make a splash, over here beside the picture of Aiden falling into the water. It comes from the Friendly Fins stamp set. This is another leftover from a previous layout. I also stamped that with Pool Party ink. Then I stamped Love Today on this spot, and I stamped and die cut a beach ball on white cardstock, again with Pool Party ink, to carry that color throughout the rest of the clusters. I wanted to show you that this stamp set, Sea Turtle, also has smaller sand dollars and sea stars that you could stamp and fussy cut out if you're following along on this layout. They're pretty much the same size as the ones that I've used from my stash. Now it's time to address the title. Off camera, I added a bit of Pool Party ink around the edges of the letters with a blending brush, just to add a little bit of texture. I've decided on Lost Lagoon for the rest of the title, but instead of getting rid of the gray letters or saving them for later, I'm actually going to attach them behind the Lagoon ones to give the title some dimension. You just need a few small drops of glue here and there to attach the 2 layers together. I'm using Barely Art glue with the precision tip, which makes it really easy to get glue exactly where I want it. This glue sets pretty quickly, so I only have a few seconds to get the layers in place. I'll attach a few pieces together with you right now, and then I'll finish the rest off camera. So the boys' lessons lasted about 2 hours long. During that time, they started on the beach, learning how to pop up into a standing position from laying down, and then one by one the instructor brought them into the water to catch a few waves. Evan was only 14 at the time and really struggled to get up onto the board, but Aiden, who was 17, managed to ride a few waves. It was still such a great experience for us watching them and for the boys to try something new. So I wanted to show you, off camera, I created this palm tree using the dies from the Beach Days set. Now, isn't this super cute? If I didn't already have the palms from the card kit, I definitely would have used these instead. The white space in the middle of the D and the A in the title was bugging me. So I took my craft knife, which I should mention is very dull, and I cut out the center of the letters. Not very well, I may add. I also felt like the title needed something extra, so I turned to the dies again from the Beach Day set and cut out this wave from Pretty Peacock cardstock. This die is pretty cool. It actually cuts out waves into the paper, and I thought I could tuck it behind the focal photo here like this, creating a layered effect, and then place these letters kind of into the wave to make them feel more integrated with the design. I might actually add some distress ink to the edges of the waves for just a little extra texture and dimension. I just love that. Isn't that cool? To help camouflage the edges, I'm going to place another circle behind here to house a few more embellishments. Now, I talk about the visual triangle or having 3 clusters on your layout, but in this case, I like the idea of introducing the small clusters around the title. It still gives it that visual triangle feel and carries the eye around the layout. Then I'll place this shell over here on this spot where the waves end. As for the other side of the title and the wave, I want to add another palm tree. I thought I could place it beside the Y, but it didn't fit very well. And to balance out the layout, I'm going to add another tree to the cluster on the right and a few more icons to finish off the title area. For a little extra flair, I added a few Riverside irregular pearls in 3s around the clusters. Near the picture of Evan, I added a sentiment sticker from the same sticker sheet and placed another wild wheat washi piece underneath it. I also dovetailed the ends of those. I added a few more finishing touches in the same color to help tie everything throughout the layout. I'm using a flip flap to add more pictures to my layout, and I prefer attaching my flip flaps to the outside of the page protectors. As for the journaling, I printed it onto a clear shipping label so it wouldn't cover up any of that beautiful pattern paper. I tried using a few of the negative pieces from the wave die cut to bring in more of that pretty peacock color into 2 of my clusters, but it just didn't work the way I had envisioned. Instead, I decided to use a few pieces from a sticker from the sticker sheet, and I dovetailed one end to match the design and balance the layout. I felt the cluster next to Evan's picture could use a palm tree to add a little bit more balance. I like to keep elements in odd numbers for a visual interest. So I added a palm tree and used dimensional foam dots on a few of the embellishments to add extra dimension. I'm really happy with how this layout came together. I hope you enjoyed watching it come to life. And if you did, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. I'd love it if you left a comment. What color combos are you loving right now for your crafts? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't already, it would be amazing if you subscribe to my channel. It sure would help me out a lot here on YouTube. These small things really help my channel grow. For still shots of this layout, be sure to visit my Instagram page. And here's a video I think you'll enjoy next. Thank you so much for watching.